Hello, welcome to Mission Driven Monday. My name is Chantal Adams, and I'm here with Chantal Sheehan. So hard for me to say that name. We were just talking about this earlier because our names are so close. But Chantal is the founder and director of Blue Fox Accounting, which right away you're probably like, oh, she's interviewing an accountant. This is the coolest accountant you will ever meet. I first met her a few years ago when I was converting an organization that I started to a nonprofit, and she helped me through that process. And she honestly, I told her this before we kind of went on air or whatever. I was like, I meet a lot of accountants who are really excited about numbers. But one thing I didn't say to you was that you were the first accountant that I ever met who just kind of exuded this real authenticity. And I found you to be very genuine and caring. And I just loved the kind of rapport that we had with one another. And I thought, gosh, if I can ever, use her again or promote her, to my friends, then I want to do that because I just think that you are so good at what you do.
Oh, thank you so much, Chantal. That's very kind.
Well, you're welcome. So Chantal is a self-described numbers nerd. And as you can see from the shirt that she's wearing, she's wearing it proudly, loud and proud for sure. But that's not all we're going to talk about today. We've got lots of fun things to talk about. And so we'll get right started doing that. Also, there was something that you said. I was kind of poking around your website and I found the manifesto that you wrote for Blue Fox Accounting. And one of the things that you said, was that you wanted to outfox the competition, which I thought was awesome. But you also used this other term that I thought was really interesting. You didn't say entrepreneurs, you said intrapreneurs. And I thought that was a really interesting term. I don't know if it had significance or you meant to say that, but I thought that's kind of a cool thing. Does it have significance?
Yeah, so intrapreneurs, as people probably know, or maybe not, are people who seek to create innovation and change from the inside out. So it happens a lot that there's entrepreneurship in larger companies, for example, or in established organizations. And so one of our goals is not only to support the entrepreneurs who are out there, both social entrepreneurs and, standard entrepreneurs,
right,
but also to support intrapreneurs, people who are maybe CFOs, at larger organizations or companies who are interested in trying new things and in embracing technology and in looking for more innovative ways to do what they do best. And so that's kind of the framework for our model, if you will, is to use technology and innovation to disrupt the traditional accounting model in a way that allows the employer or the business or the CFO to do what they do best and let us take care of the nuts and bolts of the accounting work so that we can be really human-centered when we do approach the individual.
Yeah. Well, I just thought that was so cool. And I'm glad that you explained it because I didn't even know what that was.
Yeah.
So thanks. Well, we are going to jump right into our 3 questions that we talk about every Monday. And so Chantal, when you think about your life and the things that you've done, what are you the most proud of?
This is a really hard question for me, actually. You'll find all of these are really hard questions for me because I don't really enjoy talking about myself, and that way I'm very traditionally, the accountant stereotype. I don't really like the limelight. This whole video thing's really crazy for me.
Well, thanks for being here. I know it's hard, but I like hearing from people with lots of different voices, so thank you.
No, it's great that you're doing this. It's great, and I'm really honored to be here, so thanks for the opportunity. I think 2 accomplishments probably are the proudest. On the personal side, being successfully married while being an entrepreneur is huge for me. One of the reasons, the second accomplishment, tied very closely to that, is that I actually am running a successful business on my own.
Mm-hmm.
I did not think that was possible for me. My dad actually was an entrepreneur, and he was very brilliant at what he did, but he had a lot of poor habits, let's say, just slightly dysfunctional habits, which made him less effective and less happy, over time. He was great at sales, but couldn't learn to delegate, for example, to really grow the business in the way that it could be grown. Things like that. And so we didn't have a great family experience around that small business. And so because of that, I swore up and down I would never start my own company for years. I mean, I just wanted a job. I never, ever, ever, hand God, never going to happen. And then, it just happened. It happened from a practical standpoint first. I was basically hired as a subcontractor with another CPA firm. And then I realized that there were some needs and some niches that I just felt called to fill. And so I went for it, and proceeded with, Blue Fox and starting my own company. So I think that, definitely keeping family intact while having my own business is huge. But the fact that the business even exists is probably one of my proudest achievements for as long as it continues to do so.
Yeah, I think it's really hard for entrepreneurs because as an entrepreneur, you have an idea for a business and it might be a really good idea, but you have to have all these other skills like you just said. And for somebody to be really good at all of those things is just virtually impossible. I think that's what makes being successful in a small business that you started so incredibly difficult.
That's so true, right? I mean, we do the best we can. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people think that they're entrepreneurs just because they have an idea, but that's like somebody thinking they should grow up to be a lawyer just because they like to argue. Like there are a lot of other elements to being an entrepreneur, as you've said. And so and learning, whether or not you're comfortable moving through that delegation phase, for example, or wearing all the hats that you have to wear in the very beginning. That's huge, and that makes or breaks people in those first couple of years for sure.
Yeah. Well, I read an interesting statistic. I don't even know what book it was in, but it was like, and we all know this because we hear like, oh, you're going to start your own business, probably going to fail, and it was like 90% of new businesses fail. But 20% of people whose businesses fail will start another business.
Oh, wow.
And 90% of those succeed.
Wow.
And I thought, nobody ever tells you that second part. If you just have the courage to start again and do something new, it probably will be successful.
Yeah, because you learn so much.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, when you think about where you are right now and kind of what you're learning, tell me a little bit about what that looks like. Like, what are you learning right now in the season? Because I know you've been an accountant for a long time, but Blue Fox is pretty, it's pretty new, actually.
Yeah. Hopefully it's my first business that I'm. Hopefully I'm in the 20%.
Yeah.
I've worked with a lot of startups, so I'm very familiar with this phase of life, which also helps me cope, I think.
Yeah.
But what I'm learning right now is really that very challenging piece that I just mentioned, the delegation piece, which to me is twofold with systematizing and creating structures and business systems that really work. So becoming a process-driven learning organization is where we're at right now. And it came, as with most things in this phase of life, business life, this comes out of need. Hiring more people, need to train more people. What is the most efficient way to get what's in my brain about a client down to a team member, a keeper of books, as we call them, down to a team member so that they can effectively take the books and run from there, for example. So just those kinds of things, super challenging, right? Like, how do you document all of the little minutia that you've, learned and retained about a relationship, about a company? It's really, really a challenge. So most recently, we spent about 6 months vetting project management software to try and figure out, there are some good ones for accountants, but a lot of them are very, one-dimensional. They're really focused on the bookwork, and maybe some of the other nuances of the process are difficult to nail down or to put into their system. So we're looking for a cost-effective tool, and we found one that's not adapted for accountants at all, but which we love, and it's called Hive. And putting that into place in April was like having a root canal with a spoon, but it was totally worth it. No anesthesia and a spoon. So it was brutal in many ways, especially because it was tax season and a little busier time for me. But overall completely worth it. So now we have this beautiful system where everyone on the team can, do everything you can do with like Slack, direct message, all of that. But most importantly to me in terms of quality control is the relationship with the client is fully documented. The actual work is fully documented. And I read years ago the E-Myth, and I remember that's just a core piece, right? Is getting to that next level is being able to systematize and make and put structures in place so that your company is process oriented and process driven and can run without you. Because if you're ever going to take a break, or if you ever want to sell the company, it has to be able to function beyond you, beyond the owner.
Yeah. Well, you just hit the nail on the head for me, because I was having to do some hard work today for a presentation that I have to do tomorrow regarding like my own business and kind of where it is and tensions that I'm having, whatever. And I was like, one of the things that I love to do is create content. Obviously, here I'm interviewing you and I create other kinds of content and I love it. And I'm very good at organizing that content. I can have lots of like disjointed pieces of information. I know how to bring them all together and organize it. But what I'm very bad at, and I realized today as I was doing this hard internal work, is that I'm very bad at organizing business systems. Like, how do I figure out what's the first and most important thing that I should do? How do I figure out what needs to be outsourced and what I need to do on my own? How do I know where I should be investing my time and my money? And like those questions are so hard, figuring out those processes. Nobody wants to do that hard work because, like you said, it's like having a root canal with a spoon, and nobody wants that. Nobody even wants to go to the dentist. A good dentist doesn't even want to go.
So true.
So that's just hard, and nobody wants to do it.
It is really hard, right? And it's like, for me anyway, I feel that I think you're probably a little bit of a generalist as well, and I am too. Yes, I have this accounting skill set, but I also I'm pretty good at marketing. I'm pretty good at a lot of things. And so for me, it's like, well, there's two things, right? There's the dollars and cents of how you hire, when you hire, and where you put your resources, whether that is systems or people. And then it's the other piece of, well, I'm not sure. I mean, I like to do X, Y, Z, but maybe I could hire someone to do that.
Yeah.
Or, but for me, the question, and I don't have an answer yet. I'll be very candid with you. I talk to my team constantly. I talk to my mentors constantly about this stuff, but I'm still figuring it out. It's, what do I want? Where do I want to put my time? What lights me up the most? Because I enjoy so much of what I do. It's hard to pinpoint that sometimes. But where do I want the future of the organization to go? And what do I want my role to look like? Forget 5 years from now, like next year.
Right.
So figuring out the pieces and the foundation that has to be in place in order for me to get to where I'd like to go. That's the hard work that I'm doing right now.
Yeah. I'm a part of this entrepreneur group that we do this exercise where you kind of make a cross, and in each quadrant you put like, what are the things that I should do because I should do them, the things that I should definitely not do because either I'm bad at them or hate them, and then can do, like I can do these things but somebody else probably could too, and then the things that I must do. So it's like can do, must do, should and should not, and you kind of put everything in these buckets and figure out, okay, this is where I come alive the most and what kind of fuels me, and this is where I need to.
That's a great idea. I'm going to do that today. Yeah, I love that. I mean, why it helps crystallize each bit of your time and what you do. Yeah, that's
right. Right. Well, looking to the future then, and for what's next for you, and I really just love thinking about the aspirational self, because it is so fun to think about the future, even though I feel like I always have to kind of, have this little caveat of, nobody knows what the future holds and all of that kind of thing, which is true, but it's still fun to think about what's next. I think that when we start like looking back more than we're looking ahead, then probably the end is near. So when you look forward, what do you see?
Yeah, it's really tough for me, right? Because I wasn't raised to be aspirational. I was raised to just do good work and be in the
Mm.
moment. Um, and I don't necessarily believe in legacies. And maybe that comes, I don't know where that comes from. But anyway, it's really tough. The best I can offer is I focus on being the best version of myself every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would love to be able to look back on a life where I said I accomplished important things for people who are doing really good work, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not my destiny to be part of the nonprofit world, but I think it is part of my destiny to support the growth and the sustainability of the nonprofit sector through my work. And so I would like to see, to be able to look back and say, yeah, we did that,
Mm-hmm.
and we had fun doing it.
Yeah.
And we had a great family and a great life, at the same time. Some days being aspirational is like, it would be really nice if I could take 2 weeks off and not feel guilty about it. So there's that stuff too. But I think in terms of big picture, yeah, for me, it's really about just knowing that I did good things and supported the missions of really important organizations. Because for me, I believe that we're all, that ripple effects should be magnified whenever possible.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really, I can't do that much on my own. But if Blue Fox becomes a pivotal component in the financial sustainability for a pool of nonprofits, like how cool would that be? What kind of effect, could be referred to from
Right.
that work? We don't know, but I think that's what I'm shooting for in the end.
Well, it's interesting because when you talk about that, to me, that sounds like another person would say, I want that to be my legacy. That is my legacy. And so to hear you say before you even started, I don't even really believe in legacies and I don't really know what that is. And then you're talking, I'm like, that sounds like a legacy that you're leaving.
Fair enough. Yeah. I'm just not very good at this stuff, I guess. I just put my head down and do the work, and we'll see what happens in the end.
Yeah. Well, you are a hard worker and you are doing good work, and I've loved following it. I'm going to post links to the resources that we talked about in this episode, as well as to Blue Fox Accounting. And Chantal has a great blog where you really intersperse like some fun things with some really like practical accounting help. And so I feel like it's just it's a great resource if you're a nonprofit, if you're a social entrepreneur, like wherever you are kind of in your journey. Blue Fox Accounting can help you get there for sure. So thank you for being with me today and for sharing what you're proud of and what you're learning and the legacy you are leaving. Truly, thank you.
Thank you, Chantal. It's been a pleasure.
Good. We'll see you all next week for another edition of Mission Driven Monday.